So wonderful to be here with you all. Um, and I want to just, it's my beloved Aunt Jolie's fourth yahrzeit. She passed away on the same day I started my business. So I'm also dedicating this teaching to her. So the Torah this week is the book of Korach. And what happens in the book of Korah, for those of you that might not remember or don't know, is that there's there's a rebellion. The Israelites are in the wilderness, and Korah leads this rebellion against Moses and Aaron. And the way that he's a very interesting character because he's actually a cousin of Moses and Aaron. So both literally a cousin and also kind of figuratively a cousin. Like he's a leader, he's kind of like them. He's arguing for like the holiness of the population. So he's not like an evil bad guy, but he is leading the people in the wrong direction against Moses and Aaron. And there's this key moment where he raises all these concerns and gets all the people, not all, but a lot of the people kind of activated behind him. And Moses tries to reason with him. It says, Moses says, please listen, sons of Levi. That's Korach. And Korach does not argue back. He does not go verbally sparring with him. He's silent. He refuses to engage. And there's all these midrashim that say why that might be, because Korach knows that if he goes head to head with Moses, he's going to lose. And so he just stays silent. And that silence, in that silence, he like maintains his rightness, his correctness. And Moses has no place to enter. He cannot engage. He cannot convince him to stop what he's doing. And so then God gets very angry. And it's in this kind of stark language. Korach ends up getting swallowed. Korach, all of his kind of followers and, all the people around him get sucked into the earth, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows him up. So there's this motif, if you're listening, about the mouth. First, Korach using words to be right, to give these arguments over, and then kind of sealing up and refusing to engage when he should be. And then the mouth kind of opens up and takes, forces him inside. And I was thinking when I read this about, we recently had somebody over our house who we didn't know that well. And afterwards, when they left, I was remarking to my husband, maybe you've known this type of person, that this person didn't ask a single question to us the entire time he was here. And we didn't know him that well. We asked him a lot of questions. He was willing to share and talk, and not one question back. And so we were like puzzling over it. And we were like, well, it's not that he's not, I don't think it's that he wasn't interested in us. I don't think he's just totally, like an egomaniac or, not, he didn't care. I think it's honestly that to ask a question would have been very vulnerable to him. I think it's almost terrifying sometimes to approach someone, to be with someone, to be vulnerable enough to not know how the conversation is going to go, and then like open yourself up in that way. And I think that's the case a lot of the time with people who don't ask questions, who aren't curious. It's some version of like wanting to be right and some version of not wanting to be wrong or to be vulnerable. And I think in the story of Korach, it's not just about people like Korach who do this in the outside world to one another in relationships with other people. But if we want to ask for ourselves, when are we like Korach? When is it that we stop really engaging with ourselves, with other people, with life, because it's safer, it's more comfortable to just assume that we know, to be safe in our rightness, in our correctness, in our ideas about things, rather than to cultivate that curiosity or to be open and not be able to control what happens next. There is, Aviva Zornberg writes about this, and she says that Korach is one who is so right that there is no possibility of discussion. He knows nothing of the yearning, the inner lack that reaches out to know, to court, to love. So that inner lack inside of us is not a bad thing. It's like an opening for love, for relationships, to really know other people and to really know the world. You have to not already be full of your ideas about them. And that's why Korah kind of has to face this chasm, and this storytelling of it is so, stark. Like he gets swallowed into the unknown because he cannot let it into himself. And so, as we sit today, I think what I love about practice is it forces you in some ways to again and again come flush with life, to really feel and see and experience life again and again, not our ideas about life or ourselves, but life itself as it actually is. So let's practice really doing that, really loosening again and again our ideas about things and coming into relationship with them. So I want to invite you to come to a comfortable position. You can close your eyes. You can keep them softly focused in front of you, relaxing your shoulders, letting your body find that place of stability, of openness. Our minds tend to follow our bodies. So if you open up across the heart, you let those shoulders drop, soften your jaw, kind of indicate to the body that you're really open to knowing, to being curious, to not knowing, and to experiencing. You can take a few deep breaths to settle in. Softening around any place of tightness, clenching. Feeling yourself be held and supported by your seat or the ground, whatever it is that you're sitting or lying on. And you may choose just one sense today in this sit. It can be feeling your breath rising and falling in your chest, your belly, or the tips of your nostrils. Or it can be real listening, deep listening, as sounds come in and out, hit your eardrum, as silences move in and out with the sounds. Or any other sense that feels prominent for you. And as your mind takes you places, future, past, planning, etc., see if you can just gently notice this is thinking. You can do some of that later, come back to you later. and drop into that sense of the breath, that sense of your feet against the floor or the sounds coming in. And I like to use the words just this, not to think about these senses, but to actually experience them, to feel them fully. Just this. Over and over again, returning. You may notice your ideas about things arising. This is uncomfortable. This is boring. Those are trucks outside my window. Those are birds. That's just what the mind does. It labels, it categorizes, it makes decisions and judgments. There's nothing wrong with those, but we want to hold them lightly, like they're birds in our hands. They fly in, they fly away. Our practice is to continue to turn towards actual felt sensation. Just this sound, just this feeling, just this moment. Softening and opening. Returning. Moving a little closer. Listening deeper. How is this unfolding? What are the sensations? Just this. Unclenching the body. And as best you can, unclenching the mind. Finding the space for that not knowing. I'm going to close with the words of a poem from a 17th century Catholic poet named Angelus Silesius. God, whose love and joy are present everywhere, can't come and visit you unless you aren't there. God, whose love and joy are present everywhere, can't come and visit you unless you aren't there. There has to be space. We have to make space for love, for God, for intimacy with what is. When you're ready at your own pace, you can begin to open your eyes if they're closed. You can bring your attention back into our space together. And we will do Kaddish.
So much, Yael. Let's seal that beautiful practice, offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning to recite the mourner's Kaddish. Those who aren't reciting Kaddish, please stay present for a few minutes. For those who are, to create a minyan of comfort and support for those in their time of loss. You can put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. And thanks to Natalie for sharing the words on the screen. Now, if you can, might make that just a little bit larger, that would be great. And if you're reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit. And you can unmute this time. Gadal Yitkadash Adi Brach
Amati Brachute, Yami Mahute, Kayakon of Yomekon, Duhibe,
Ba'agala
Mahosi,
Bizman Kariv
Bagalas, Amen,
Yehesh Me Rabba Mevarach Olam Amaya Yitbarach Yishtabach Yitpa'ar Yitrama
Brahma, the Ase,
Yitadar Yitalel Halal Shemei V'Shem Va'ela Kol Birchata V'Shirata Ushbechata V'Nechemata Da'amiran Ba'alma V'Yimru Amen Yehesh Lama Rabba Min Shemaya B'chaim Alim Yalko Yisrael V'Yimru Amen Oseh Shalom B'Ramav U'Yachzor Shalom B'Neinu V'Yalko Yisrael V'Yalko Yoshvei Tevel
Amen.
Say shalom b'mamav.
Amen.
Friends, thanks for joining us today. Just a reminder that we will not be meeting live tomorrow, the 4th of July, or Friday. Back next week. Put in the chat our lineup for next week. Rosh Chodesh Tammuz arrives Saturday night, Sunday, and Jen and Sadaka at the Well will lead us on Monday, and you can see the rest of the lovely lineup next week with Rabbi Lauren Henderson, Rabbi Daniel Raphael Silverstein, Rabbi Genevieve Greinitz, and I'll be here on Friday for us to sit in Shabbat together. Looking forward to that very much. I hope people can hear me. Can people hear me? Thumbs up. Yep. And also, there is a link to the poem, the line that Yael just shared at the end of that beautiful practice. If you're leaving us now, we hope to see you next week on Monday. And if you're staying with us, as we hope you will, join us for conversation about today's practice, just share reflections on your experience today, or continue to use this time and space to sit with us. And just turn the volume off on your device if you'd like to continue with your practice and just sit with us until we conclude. You're welcome to do that as well. Okay, Yael, thank you so much. You probably weren't in on yesterday's sit with Mira Weil, but this was just like a great follow-up on that. I think also picking up on Korach. You've had me when you were telling me, you were sharing that anecdote about the guest that doesn't ask questions and how we respond to that. And that always irks me. I make up in my mind a lack of curiosity, a lack of interest, a kind of self-centeredness. And I really appreciated that you kind of traced that down to its root of anxiety, fear of, and I think you were just basically said, tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, basically losing control, like, of what might happen. Once you ask a question, who knows what's going to come up, right? Better to contain it to what's knowable and speak in sentences and not questions, which made me think about the Korach beginning, which is interesting because Korach and Korach's gang make a statement. They begin with a statement. They say, there's too much for you, right? And then
It
they
got
ask,
too much.
got too much, but then they ask a question, but it isn't really a question. It's like, why do you lift yourself above the people? Which is not, it's in a question form. And the
Right.
question is like, it's not a question. It's like, it's like one of those, you know, unanswerable questions. Like, whoa, what do you mean? Who's raising themselves above? So it's not a question. It's not a curious question, I guess is my point. And so yesterday we are talking a little bit about our own inner Korach, acknowledging the inner Korach. And so this really helped me think about that, about that we all have that anxiety. And so this was a practice today, just to restate my understanding of the practice of, I really loved, and what hit me was the unclenching our tendency to grasp for knowing and to rest in vulnerability. And struck me that that word vulnerability is another convenient shorthand for what we mean by practice. It means entering into a space of vulnerability, creating the container that enables us to be in a space of vulnerability. It's almost like basically is a sukkah, right? Of, feeling safe in a state of vulnerability. So I wanted to invite you to, that was the thrust of the practice today. And so I found myself toggling between noticing, knowing, and wanting to know, and saying, let go of that. Let go of that. Is that what you were going for? Is that, or we want to expand a little bit on that? Because then it leads go back to that beautiful line that we shared at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's such a beautiful kind of recap, and getting to the point of it. And it's both like vulnerability of not knowing
Mhm.
and not being right, like not having things be knowable, even like in any given moment, we really want to know. We really want to grasp hold of, well, at least like this is true and this is true. And it's not like we can live in or we should even live in like a not knowable world, or a world with no ideas about how things are, because we have to have some ideas, and we have some like strongly held beliefs, and that's beautiful and important. And like a lot of people are writing in the chat, and I think you brought this up in our last conversation, like this is a scary political, anxiety filled political moment in America, leading up to the election. And I think we feel the pain of not knowing how things are going to turn out. And we also feel the pain of holding very strong to like our ideas of rightness. And I think that, both of them need a little bit of room and breath to, if we're gonna kind of get out of this alive.
Yeah. One of the things that I see came up in the chat is the relationship between this Torah portion and this whole issue that we're describing now. and grief as a theme for last week's Torah portion with the spies, where the people find out they're not going to make it to the promised land, right? Their next generation will, which theoretically is a comfort, but they're not going to get there themselves, right? So thinking about that relationship between grief, anticipatory grief, and vulnerability of not knowing in fearful times. There is a lot to be concerned about, needless to say, on pretty much every front these days. And so just I guess I'm going to ask you personally, how do you notice this, not just when you're sitting, but if you go about your day, you read the news, you see the news, you social media scroll, whatever. And we want to take stands. We do want to know enough, right, to be able to take a stand and at the same time maintain that kind of without clenching, right? So I want to maybe, if you're willing, just us, 120 folks, and YouTube. So what would you say? How do you manage that? How do you bring this practice into
Yeah.
horrible times?
I think Lori puts this in the chat, and I'm practicing this non-stop, which is okay, there is this scary thing coming, or this kind of very scary things happening, multiple crises happening in our world. And the body's first response is to be scared, to clench. And for me anyway, then what I do from that is either I want to just go to sleep for a long time. Like I just want to, forget about it, not have to think about it or do anything about it. And that is also like just a response to fear. It's like fight, flight, that's the flight, or freeze. And, I do some variations of all three. And then it's like the practice, like our meditation practice is very similar to life. So we need energy in order to sit and practice. We need to have effort. You can't just practice and not have any effort. So once we make the effort, we do the things we need to do in all areas that we do have control, whatever we have to do, that's so important. Calling people, doing whatever it takes to try and use as much of the actual control to act. Then there's a letting go, just like in practice, like you said, unclenching, kind of being like, and I'm not in control of the outcome. I don't know what is going to happen. I'm in control of this corner of this tiny little world, and that is correct. Do what you can there. And then it's just releasing control, releasing again and again, and also releasing kind of the sense like, what's going to happen. We can guess what's going to happen. It's not always good, but we don't really know. And so it's all those levels of just kind of opening up, coming back, taking care of ourselves, doing effort where we can, again and again.
Yeah. I appreciate Susan bringing the Amichai poem about the place where we are right, which is another great poem on the same theme. And it just strikes me that I'm curious about this too, since you teach mindfulness in Jewish context and also in general context, right? You talk about Jewish mindfulness. For me, and I'm curious, if you see this too, one of the things that I think about that's Jewish about mindfulness in terms of this idea of holding but not clenching, right? Is halakha, Jewish law, at least as it was traditionally understood, which is both has this capacity to be fixed at different times. In other words, Jewish law has always been codified, like here's the answer, here's the practice, right? but it constantly is evolving and changing as well. The Talmud itself is not a code of law. It's got all these different opinions, right? And it requires openness, different opinions, and all the minority opinions are preserved. So just like in theory, constitutional law should be, you have a document and you have a through line and you have positions, and you have vulnerability, curiosity built in, and every answer is provisional. You say, here's my answer, here's my position. Like you said, I'm going to use my effort, I'm going to advocate for this, and I'm going to be aware that I could be wrong, and I need to be open at the same time. So I just wanted to lift that up because for me, that's, like, I learned that in a mindfulness context. I said, like, oh yeah, I see that in my tradition as well, right? At its best, at least. That's how I understand it.
Yes, I love that, that there's like breathing room and there's movement and there's air, and that has to be the case for any tradition.
Right. And anytime it has gotten calcified, it kind of has gotten, it's like it's like ice that's been broken up, and then the river of change keeps moving.
Right. Idol, one might say
I'm
something
sorry.
like an idol,
Yeah, exactly. Right.
not, I'm not supposed to be worshiping those things.
Right. And right from the get-go with Abraham, that's really what it means, right? So that's a great one too, right? To be a Jew is to be an idol smasher, which is to mean like anything that is fixed and made into an absolute cannot be true, right? And just it's really worth lifting that up. All right, we just got 2 minutes here. Fern is asking a great question. What does it actually mean to be in control? That is a state to pause and think about. How would you answer that one? That's a great question. What does it actually mean to be in control? Which, of course, we're trying to be. But what is, are we ever actually in control? No, no. Not really.
Yeah, that's right. No, we never are.
It's an illusion.
That's right. That's right. And it's also an illusion to really know anything for certain.
Mm-hmm.
A billion things could kind of come in and disrupt what we know, and
Mm-hmm.
things already disrupting at every moment what we know.
Right.
So it really does. I mean, we really are very vulnerable, even though we have a lot of things, defenses that try and prevent against it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, let's wrap up. I think we have to wrap that up there. I'm sorry.
Can I throw one
That's
more
so rich. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So I didn't know where to place it, but there's this unbelievable poetic tikkun at the end of this Korach story,
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that his descendants become these singers, these people who have these open throats, these voices that you need to be fairly vulnerable in order to sing. And I don't know what it means, but I find it very, very beautiful.
I don't know what it means either, but I also find it beautiful,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you lifted that up. And maybe we end with just the words of that poem, a reminder to take us into our little respite here. God, whose love and joy are present everywhere, can't come to visit us unless we aren't there. So, thanks as always, Yael. It's a pleasure. And it's your aunt, Jolie, you said, right? Who's your site? Your
My
your aunt,
yes.
yeah. So Zichron Livracha, may her memory be a blessing. Thank you so much for dedicating today's practice to her memory and her neshama. Let it shine in this world. And blessings to everyone. Hope you have a good break. Wishing you everyone Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov, and we'll get to delve into the theme of the new month of Tammuz on Monday with Jenna Sadaka. Looking forward to